Picture this. A grieving woman searches the entire ancient world for pieces of her murdered husband's body. She finds them all, reassembles him like the world's most sacred jigsaw puzzle, and brings him back to life with pure magical power. Sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster, right? Well, this story is over 4,000 years old and it belongs to Isis, arguably the most powerful goddess in Egyptian mythology. Isis wasn't just any deity lounging around on Mount Olympus, sipping nectar and gossiping about mortals. She was the ultimate multitasker, master magician, devoted wife, protective mother, and resurrection specialist all rolled into one. Her story has everything: passionate love, brutal betrayal, epic quests, magical battles, and a plot twist that would make M. Night Shyamalan jealous. Ancient Egyptians worshipped her for over 3,000 years, and her influence spread across the entire Mediterranean world. But here's what makes Isis truly special. Her story isn't just about divine drama. It's about the lengths someone will go to for love, the power of determination against impossible odds, and how a mother's protection knows no bounds. These themes hit just as hard today as they did when pharaohs ruled the Nile. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into the most epic love story, revenge tale, and magical adventure that ancient Egypt ever produced. Trust me, by the end of this journey, you'll understand why Isis became the template for every powerful female figure that followed. Long before Isis became the supreme goddess of magic, she started life as part of the most dysfunctional divine family tree in Egyptian mythology. Her father was Geb, the earth god who literally was the ground beneath everyone's feet. Her mother was Nut, the sky goddess who arched over the world like a star-spangled blanket. Talk about having your parents everywhere you look. The ancient Egyptians believed these two cosmic forces created four children who would shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. Isis emerged into existence alongside her siblings, Osiris, Set, and Nephthys. From day one, this wasn't your typical family dynamic. Osiris, the eldest, radiated wisdom and natural leadership like a divine golden boy. Set burned with ambition and jealousy, already plotting his way to the top. Nephthys possessed gentle healing powers, but often lived in her siblings' shadows. And then there was Isis, born with an intelligence so sharp it could cut through divine politics and a magical potential that made other gods nervous. The siblings belonged to the Ennead of Heliopolis, basically the Egyptian equivalent of a divine council. Think of it as the ultimate family business, except the business was running the entire universe. Ra, the sun god and grandfather figure, watched over this cosmic corporation from his solar throne. But even Ra recognized something special in young Isis. She didn't just learn magic, she devoured it like a scholar cramming for the most important exam in cosmic history. Here's where Isis proved she was no ordinary goddess. She became obsessed with learning Ra's secret names. In Egyptian magic, knowing someone's true name gave you power over them. Ra had dozens of hidden names, each containing enough magical energy to level mountains. Most gods wouldn't dare attempt this cosmic identity theft. Isis? She saw it as a challenge worth accepting. She crafted a magical serpent from Ra's own saliva and dust, then had it bite the sun god. Talk about playing with fire. When Ra writhed in agony from the serpent's poison, Isis played the concerned healer. She offered to cure him, but only if he revealed his secret names. Ra, desperate for relief, spilled his magical secrets like a divine phone book. Isis absorbed this knowledge and became the most magically powerful being in the Egyptian pantheon, except for Ra himself. She went from promising young goddess to magical powerhouse in one brilliant stroke of cunning. But Isis's greatest power wasn't just her magic, it was her heart. While her brothers focused on rulership and rivalry, she developed an incredible capacity for love and protection. She became the goddess of magic, motherhood, and healing, but these weren't separate roles. They were all expressions of her fundamental nature, someone who would move heaven and earth to protect what she cherished. Little did anyone know, this combination of supreme magical power and boundless love would soon be put to the ultimate test. And when that test came, it would reshape Egyptian mythology forever. If there's such a thing as a perfect match in mythology, Isis and Osiris wrote the playbook. From childhood, these two siblings shared a connection that went beyond typical family bonds. They understood each other's thoughts, complemented each other's strengths, and shared a vision for what Egypt could become. When they fell in love and married, different times, sibling marriage was totally normal for Egyptian royalty. It wasn't just a wedding, it was the cosmic alignment of wisdom and magic, creating the most powerful divine partnership in Egyptian history. Osiris brought the gifts of civilization to humanity like the world's first life coach. He taught mortals how to farm, brew beer, and bake bread, basically everything needed for a functioning society. He established laws, introduced religious practices, and showed people how to live in harmony with each other and the gods. Meanwhile, Isis worked her magic behind the scenes, literally. She protected the people with powerful spells, healed the sick with her divine touch, and taught women the arts of weaving, brewing, and child-rearing. Together, they transformed Egypt from a collection of warring tribes into a unified, prosperous kingdom. Their rule became the gold standard of divine leadership. Osiris handled the big picture stuff, establishing order, teaching wisdom, and making those tough, kingly decisions. Isis managed the magical infrastructure that kept everything running smoothly. She warded off disasters, ensured good harvests, and protected the people from supernatural threats. Think of them as the ultimate power couple, if that power couple happened to control the forces of nature and the destiny of nations. The people of Egypt absolutely adored them. Osiris wasn't some distant, terrifying deity demanding constant sacrifices. He walked among his subjects, teaching and helping personally. Isis became the divine mother figure that every Egyptian could turn to in times of trouble. Need healing? Call on Isis. Want protection for your children? Isis had your back. Worried about your husband's journey through the afterlife? Isis knew all the right spells. She became the goddess you could actually talk to, not just worship from afar. But here's what made their partnership truly special. They ruled through love, not fear. While other mythologies are full of gods who terrorized mortals into submission, Isis and Osiris inspired devotion through kindness and genuine care. They established Ma'at, the cosmic principle of truth, justice, and balance that became the foundation of Egyptian civilization. Under their guidance, Egypt experienced a golden age where art flourished, wisdom grew, and people lived in harmony with the divine order. Unfortunately, someone was watching all this domestic bliss with growing resentment. Set, Osiris's younger brother, burned with jealousy every time he saw the happy couple ruling their perfect kingdom. He wanted what Osiris had: the throne, the respect, the love of the people. Most of all, he wanted Isis herself. Set began plotting in the shadows, planning a betrayal so shocking it would shatter this golden age forever. The perfect union of Isis and Osiris was about to face its ultimate test, and the consequences would echo through Egyptian mythology for millennia. Set's jealousy had been simmering for years, like a pot about to boil over. Every time he saw Osiris receiving praise, every moment he watched Isis and Osiris ruling together in perfect harmony, that green-eyed monster grew stronger. Set wanted the throne, he wanted the power, and most disturbingly, he wanted Isis for himself. But Set was clever. He knew he couldn't just challenge Osiris to a fair fight. His brother was too beloved, too powerful, and had Isis's magic backing him up. So Set decided to get creative with his revenge, and his creativity was absolutely diabolical. The plan Set hatched was worthy of a master criminal. He secretly measured Osiris's body and commissioned the most beautiful chest ever crafted, essentially a coffin, but nobody called it that. This chest was a work of art, decorated with precious metals and gems, designed to be irresistible to anyone who saw it. Set then organized a grand feast, inviting Osiris and dozens of other guests. He presented the chest as a gift, announcing that whoever fit inside it perfectly could keep it. Talk about the worst party game in history. One by one, the guests tried to fit inside the magnificent chest. Some were too tall, others too wide, a few too short. The whole thing seemed like harmless entertainment until Osiris took his turn. Of course, he fit perfectly. The moment Osiris lay down inside, Set's conspirators slammed the lid shut and sealed it with molten lead. Osiris, trapped inside the sealed chest, met a tragic end. The golden age of Egypt had just ended at a dinner party, and the guests were too shocked to stop it. Set didn't waste time gloating. He and his accomplices rushed the sealed chest to the Nile River and hurled it into the waters. The current carried Osiris's coffin downstream toward the Mediterranean Sea and far from Egyptian soil. Set probably thought he was being clever. No body, no evidence, no way for Isis to work her resurrection magic. He clearly underestimated both the power of the Nile and the determination of a grieving wife who happened to be the most magically gifted being in the pantheon. When news of Osiris's murder reached Isis, her reaction shook the very foundations of the divine realm. Her wails of grief cracked temple walls across Egypt. Her tears fell like rain, causing the Nile to flood its banks. The goddess who had spent her life protecting and nurturing others suddenly found herself facing the ultimate loss. But Isis wasn't the type to collapse under tragedy. Her grief transformed into something far more powerful, an iron-willed determination to find her husband's body and bring him back, no matter what it took. Set seized the throne immediately, declaring himself the rightful king of Egypt. But his rule was a disaster from day one. Without Osiris's wisdom and Isis's protective magic, chaos began creeping back into the world. Crops failed, storms raged, and the people cried out for their beloved god-king. Set had gotten what he wanted, but victory tasted bitter when nobody respected his authority. Meanwhile, Isis began the most epic quest in Egyptian mythology, a journey that would take her across the known world and beyond. She was going to find Osiris, and heaven help anyone who got in her way. Isis's quest to find Osiris's body wasn't just a journey. It was a masterclass in determination, magic, and detective work that would make Sherlock Holmes jealous. She began by using her most powerful magical ability, shape-shifting into a kite, a type of hawk sacred to her. From the skies above Egypt, she could cover vast distances and see things hidden from ground level. Picture the world's most determined bird of prey, soaring over the Nile Delta, scanning every inlet and reed bed for traces of her beloved husband. The search led Isis far beyond Egypt's borders, following the Mediterranean currents that had carried Osiris's coffin. She questioned fishermen, merchants, and sailors in every port. Some had seen a beautiful chest floating past. Others remembered strange dreams or omens. Slowly, painstakingly, Isis pieced together her husband's path like following breadcrumbs across the ancient world. Her quest took her through dangerous waters, where sea monsters lurked, and into foreign lands where she didn't speak the language. Nothing stopped her. Not storms, not hostile locals, not the growing certainty that she might be too late. Finally, Isis's investigation led her to Byblos, a prosperous trading city on the Lebanese coast. Here, the trail got interesting in the most unexpected way. The coffin containing Osiris had washed ashore and become entangled in the roots of a young tamarisk tree. The tree, nourished by the divine essence within the coffin, grew into the most magnificent specimen anyone had ever seen. Its trunk was so large and beautiful that King Malkander had it cut down and turned into a pillar for his palace. Talk about hiding in plain sight. Isis arrived in Byblos disguised as an elderly woman, because sometimes the best magic is just good acting. She took a job as a nursemaid to Queen Astarte's infant son, quickly proving herself indispensable with her natural maternal instincts and subtle use of healing magic. The baby thrived under her care, never getting sick, always happy and peaceful. But Isis had bigger plans than childcare. She was slowly working her way closer to that pillar, which her magical senses told her contained something precious. Here's where the story takes a turn that's both heartwarming and slightly terrifying. Isis became so fond of the royal baby that she decided to grant him immortality. Her method? Placing him in a magical fire each night to burn away his mortal nature, while she transformed into a kite and flew around him protectively. One night, Queen Astarte caught her in the act and screamed in horror, thinking this strange nursemaid was trying to murder her child. The queen's interference broke the spell, costing the baby his chance at immortality. Isis was not happy about this interruption. The moment had come for dramatic revelation. Isis dropped her disguise and appeared in her full divine glory, radiating such power that the entire palace shook. Queen Astarte and King Malcander fell to their knees, realizing they'd been employing a goddess as their babysitter. Isis explained her quest and asked for the pillar containing her husband's body. The royal couple, terrified and awed, immediately granted her request. They even provided a ship to carry the pillar back to Egypt. Isis had found Osiris at last, but her trials were far from over. Set was still out there, and he wasn't going to give up his stolen throne without a fight. Just when Isis thought her troubles were over, Set decided to up his villain game. He discovered that his brother's body had been recovered and was now safely hidden away. Talk about bad timing. Set's rage burned hotter than the desert sun. He couldn't stand the thought that his perfect murder plot had been undone by his sister-in-law's determination. Set tracked down Osiris's body under cover of darkness. What he did next was so brutal that even the other gods were shocked. He divided Osiris's form into 14 sacred parts, each tied to an aspect of Egyptian cosmology. The head symbolized divine wisdom. The heart represented the seat of the soul. Every piece had sacred meaning in Egyptian belief. But Set wasn't satisfied with just dismembering his brother. He scattered the 14 pieces across the entire length of Egypt, from the Delta to Nubia. His plan was diabolically clever. If Isis couldn't find even one piece, Osiris could never be whole again. Set thought he'd finally won this cosmic game of cat and mouse. When Isis discovered what had happened, her anguish echoed across the heavens. The Nile itself wept, causing its annual flood from her tears. But here's what Set didn't count on. Isis's love was stronger than his hatred. She wiped away her tears, straightened her crown, and prepared for the most important quest of her immortal life. You think finding your keys is hard? Try locating 14 body parts across an entire kingdom. Isis began the most epic scavenger hunt in mythological history. She transformed herself into a kite, a bird of prey with incredible eyesight. From high above the Nile, she searched every temple, every tomb, every sacred grove. Her sister Nephthys joined the hunt, along with Anubis, the jackal-headed god who would later become the patron of embalmers. One by one, they found the pieces. Each discovery was like finding a treasure more precious than gold. Isis carefully preserved each part using her magical knowledge of herbs and spells. She was essentially inventing the mummification process as she went along. Talk about learning on the job. The ancient Egyptians later credited her with teaching them this sacred art of preservation. The search took months, maybe years. Isis found 13 of the 14 pieces scattered from the Mediterranean coast to the First Cataract. But one piece remained missing, and it was a rather important one. The fish in the Nile had consumed a vital part of Osiris's form. Without this final piece, traditional resurrection seemed impossible. But Isis wasn't called the goddess of magic for nothing. She crafted a replacement organ from clay and gold, blessing it with her most powerful spells. Then came the moment that would define Egyptian religion forever. Isis reassembled her husband's body piece by piece, wrapping each section in linen strips blessed with magical formulas. The resurrection ritual was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Isis spread her wings over Osiris's body, chanting spells that made the very air shimmer with power. She called upon Ra, upon Thoth, upon every god who owed her favors. The magic she wove was so complex that later Egyptian priests spent centuries studying her techniques. Slowly, impossibly, Osiris's eyes opened. His chest began to rise and fall. The first mummy had returned to life. But this wasn't a permanent resurrection. It was a divine miracle with a time limit. Osiris had just enough life force for one crucial act. In that magical moment, Isis and Osiris conceived their son Horus. The symbolism was profound. Death had been conquered, but only temporarily. Life could triumph over destruction, but at great cost. This story became the foundation of Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife. Every pharaoh who was mummified was following Isis's example, hoping to achieve what Osiris had, a form of eternal life. Pretty impressive for ancient relationship counseling. Pregnancy is tough enough without having a murderous brother-in-law hunting you down. Isis knew that Set would stop at nothing to kill her unborn child, the rightful heir to Egypt's throne. So she did what any sensible goddess would do. She went into hiding in the most inhospitable place she could find. The marshes of the Nile Delta became her secret sanctuary. The Delta marshes were perfect for hiding. Thick papyrus reeds grew taller than houses, creating a natural maze. Crocodiles and hippos kept unwanted visitors away, ancient Egypt's version of a security system. Here, among the mud and mosquitoes, the most powerful goddess in Egypt lived like a refugee. She ate fish and bird, slept on reed mats, and waited for her child to be born. When Horus finally arrived, Isis faced a new challenge: raising a divine baby in secret. Baby gods aren't like regular babies. They glow in the dark, accidentally set things on fire, and attract every dangerous creature for miles around. Isis had to use constant magic just to keep little Horus safe and hidden. The marshes were crawling with deadly threats. Scorpions, snakes, and crocodiles all posed dangers to the infant god. But Isis had become the ultimate protective mother. She wove magical shields around their hiding spots and taught herself healing spells for every possible injury. Her lullabies were actually protective incantations. Set's spies searched everywhere for the missing heir. They questioned fishermen, bribed marsh dwellers, and even sent shape-shifting demons to hunt through the reeds. But Isis was always one step ahead. She moved their hideouts regularly, disguised herself as a poor widow, and used every trick in the divine book. For years, the future king of Egypt grew up in a swamp, protected by a mother's love and some seriously impressive magic. Who needs a royal palace when you've got that kind of security? Even with all of Isis's protection, disaster eventually struck. Young Horus was playing in the marshes when a scorpion stung him. Not just any scorpion, this was one of Set's creatures, sent specifically to kill the boy. The venom was so potent that Horus collapsed immediately, his little body convulsing as the poison spread through his divine blood. Isis's anguish was beyond description. Her magical healing spells weren't working. The scorpion's venom was too powerful, too specifically designed to kill gods. In desperation, she did something unprecedented. She challenged Ra himself, the king of all gods. She threatened to stop the sun from rising if he didn't save her son. Talk about playing hardball with the boss. Ra was initially furious at this divine blackmail, but when he saw Isis's determination and heard her compelling arguments, even the sun god was moved. He sent Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic, to help revive Horus. Together, Isis and Thoth worked a miracle, drawing the poison from the boy's body and restoring his life force. This episode became legendary throughout Egypt. It showed that a mother's love could move even the king of gods. It also established Isis as someone who would challenge divine authority itself to protect her child. Egyptian mothers would later pray to Isis when their own children faced danger, knowing she understood their desperation. The story also gave Horus immunity to all poisons, a handy trait for a future king who'd face many assassination attempts. When Horus came of age, it was time to claim his father's throne. But Set wasn't about to give up power without a fight. What followed was the most epic legal battle in mythological history, 80 years of contests, trials, and divine litigation. Think of it as ancient Egypt's most dramatic court case, with the fate of the kingdom hanging in the balance. The divine tribunal convened to hear both sides. Set argued that he was the stronger candidate, proven by his victory over Osiris. Horus countered that he was the rightful heir, son of the legitimate king. The gods were split down the middle. Some supported the principle of inheritance. Others believed in might makes right. Even divine democracy can get messy. The judges decided on a series of contests to determine the rightful ruler. First came tests of physical strength, then magical duels, then contests of wit and wisdom. Isis served as Horus's coach, strategist, and magical backup. She was like the ultimate stage mom, except her son was fighting for control of an entire civilization. One famous contest involved a boat race, but with a twist. Set built his boat from stone, thinking it would be unbeatable in ramming combat. Horus, following his mother's advice, created a wooden boat disguised to look like stone. When Set's real stone boat sank like, well, a stone, the gods had to admit Horus's cleverness. Sometimes brains beat brawn, even in divine competitions. But Set was a sore loser and a creative cheater. In one contest, he transformed into a hippopotamus and tried to sink Horus's boat from below. In another, he challenged Horus to a contest of eating, then served him lettuce laced with his own. Well, let's just say it was a very inappropriate addition to the salad. Ancient myths could get surprisingly crude. Isis repeatedly saved her son from Set's schemes through quick thinking and powerful magic. When Set tried to blind Horus, she restored his sight. When he poisoned the contest arena, she purified it. When he bribed the judges, she exposed his corruption. She was part lawyer, part healer, part divine bodyguard, the ultimate multitasking mom. The contest dragged on for decades because neither side could gain a decisive advantage. Some gods grew tired of the endless trials and wanted to split Egypt between them, but Isis refused to accept anything less than total victory for her son. She knew that compromise with evil never works out well. Her persistence would eventually pay off, but not before one final dramatic showdown that would shake the very foundations of heaven. After 80 years of legal battles, magical duels, and divine politics, the moment of truth finally arrived. The tribunal rendered their final verdict. Horus was declared the rightful king of Egypt. Set's reign of terror was officially over. The younger generation had triumphed over corruption, and legitimate succession was restored. It was like winning the world's longest custody battle. Horus's coronation was a celebration that shook the heavens. All the gods who had supported him rejoiced, while even his former opponents acknowledged his victory. The crown of Egypt was placed upon his falcon head, and the two kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt, were united under his rule. The cosmic order known as Ma'at was restored to the world. Isis stood beside her son as he took the throne, finally vindicated after decades of struggle. She had successfully protected and guided him from helpless infant to triumphant king. Her role as the divine mother was complete, but her influence would continue forever. Every future pharaoh would claim to be Horus reborn, making Isis the eternal mother of Egyptian kingship. The victory established a pattern that would define Egyptian civilization for 3,000 years. Legitimate rulers inherited power through divine succession, not through violence or usurpation. The pharaoh was both human king and living god, protected by Isis's maternal magic and Horus's royal authority. Set was banished to the desert, where he became the god of chaos and foreign lands. Basically, ancient Egypt's way of putting troublemakers in timeout forever. Justice had prevailed, family bonds had triumphed over jealousy, and order had conquered chaos. Not bad for a day's work. By now, Isis had basically become the ultimate divine overachiever. She wasn't just Egypt's goddess anymore. She was going global. During the Ptolemaic period, Greek rulers spread her worship throughout the Mediterranean. Think of it as ancient divine marketing at its finest. Isis temples popped up everywhere from Rome to Britain. She wasn't just the goddess of magic and motherhood anymore. People called her the goddess of 10,000 names because she absorbed powers from local deities wherever her worship spread. Talk about collecting job titles. The Romans absolutely loved her. Mystery cults dedicated to Isis promised followers rebirth and eternal life. Sound familiar? These mystery religions were giving early Christianity some serious competition. Both offered salvation, resurrection, and a divine mother figure who cared deeply about humanity. Isis worship involved dramatic initiation ceremonies. Followers would experience symbolic death and rebirth, just like Osiris had. The famous Roman writer Apuleius described his initiation as the most profound spiritual experience of his life. These weren't casual Sunday services, they were life-changing, theatrical experiences. Her temples became centers of healing and learning. Priests and priestesses of Isis were known throughout the ancient world as skilled doctors and magicians. If you had a problem, medical, spiritual, or romantic, Isis's people had solutions. But here's where it gets really interesting. Isis wasn't just competing with Christianity. she was influencing it too. Many scholars believe her imagery as the divine mother holding the child Horus directly influenced early Christian art depicting Mary with baby Jesus. Ancient syncretism at work. Isis was basically the ancient world's ultimate supernatural consultant. Her magical abilities weren't just party tricks, they were serious divine intervention. She could heal any disease, protect against evil spirits, and even reverse death itself. No wonder people lined up at her temples. Her most famous magical feat was learning the secret names of Ra, the sun god. In Egyptian belief, knowing someone's true name gave you power over them. Isis created a poisonous snake that bit Ra, then refused to heal him unless he revealed his secret names. Clever negotiating tactics, divine style. Egyptian magicians called themselves followers of Isis for good reason. They used her spells for everything from curing headaches to protecting houses from fire. Archaeological evidence shows thousands of magical papyri with Isis's name invoked for protection, love spells, and healing rituals. Her protective magic was legendary. Mothers would recite Isis spells over sick children. Sailors carried her amulets for safe voyages. Even pharaohs wore her protective symbols into battle. She was like having the ultimate insurance policy, but with actual divine backing instead of paperwork. Ancient Egyptian artists had a field day depicting Isis. Her most iconic look featured the throne hieroglyph as her crown, literally meaning she was a seat of royal power. This wasn't just fashion, it was a political statement that pharaohs ruled through her divine authority. Her protective wings became another signature image. Temple walls show Isis with outstretched wings sheltering the dead, promising them safe passage to the afterlife. These weren't decorative elements. They were visual prayers carved in stone. Ancient Egyptians believed sacred images had real protective power. The nursing scenes were particularly popular. Isis breastfeeding Horus appeared on everything from temple walls to household amulets. This imagery emphasized her role as the divine mother who nourished not just gods, but all humanity. Talk about the ultimate maternal figure. She literally fed the divine. Even goddesses can't escape historical change. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, Isis worship gradually declined. The last temple dedicated to her at Philae in southern Egypt finally closed in 550 CE. That's over 1,000 years after most other pagan temples had shut down. But Isis didn't just disappear, she transformed. Many of her attributes merged into Christian veneration of the Virgin Mary. The protective divine mother, the Queen of Heaven, the compassionate intercessor for humanity. Sound familiar? Early Christian artists even borrowed Isis's iconography directly. The transition wasn't always smooth. Some Christian writers specifically attacked Isis worship, recognizing her as serious competition. They couldn't deny her appeal, though. A loving divine mother who promised salvation was exactly what people wanted in uncertain times. Isis never really went away. She just went underground for a while. During the Renaissance, scholars rediscovered Egyptian texts and became fascinated with her story. By the 19th century, she was starring in operas, novels, and romantic paintings. Ancient mythology was having a comeback. Modern goddess worship movements have totally embraced Isis. She represents female power, magical ability, and maternal protection in contemporary spirituality. From Wiccan circles to feminist theology, her influence is everywhere. She's like the patron saint of divine feminine energy. Pop culture can't get enough of her either. Movies, TV shows, comics, and video games regularly feature Isis as the ultimate magical goddess. Her story hits all the right notes: love, betrayal, resurrection, and triumph over evil. It's basically the perfect mythological blockbuster that's been running for over 4,000 years. Isis represents something truly timeless in human experience. Her story touches the deepest themes that connect us all: unconditional love, the pain of loss, the power of determination, and the fierce protection of those we cherish. She faced the ultimate tragedy and responded with the ultimate act of love. What makes her legendary isn't just her magical powers or divine status. It's her very human emotions in superhuman circumstances. She grieved like any widow, fought like any mother protecting her child, and never gave up when everything seemed hopeless. That's why her story has survived millennia while countless other myths have faded away. Her legacy reminds us that the most powerful force in any mythology isn't magic or divine authority. It's love that refuses to accept defeat. Whether you see her as ancient goddess, archetypal symbol, or fascinating historical figure, Isis shows us that some stories are too powerful to ever really end. They just keep getting retold, generation after generation, because they speak to something eternal in the human heart.